to I Need a Session. I'm Kim Wilson, your host. This show is all about self empowerment. I created a safe space for people to share their stories and experiences. I believe every human being has a story that is connected to the healing or growth of another human being. Our very special guest today, Kim Scott, does a wonderful job of taking us on her journey as a musician. She is a flutist. She is a powerhouse musician. I can't wait for you to experience her. I recently received my signed autograph copies from Kim. I'm one of those people, I still enjoy purchasing CDs. I love having a physical product in my hand. It feels like an experience for me when I can just open up the flap and read the bio and the credits and experience the photos. So if you wanted to make your purchase, certainly go to kimscottmusic.com. But we'll hear more about Kim as we get into the show. But first, starting us off with what I consider music therapy is Kim performance titled Best Part. Enjoy. Meet Intervision Records label recording artist Kim Scott. She has impressed audiences across the globe in performances and on the airwaves, from her 2011 debut album, Crossing Over, to her #1 Billboard charting 2019 album, Free to Be. Known for her exceptional tone, intoxicating melodies, and flawless technique, she is one of the most sought-after flutists in both the classical and jazz fields. The contemporary jazz superstar has an ever-growing fan base garnered from her continued presence on the performance scene and from her visibility as radio host of the nationally syndicated jazz program Kim Scott's Block Party Radio, which airs weekly across the world. With 4 albums to her credit, Kim Scott has proven to be a mainstay in the field and promise for the future as both a soloist and collaborator. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kim Scott. Kim, yes, Lady Kim, thank you so much for joining me today. one of the first questions I asked Kim, because I wanted to clear up, is it flutist or flautist? Let's just get that out the way.
That is a great question, and I get that question a lot. So, both of them are familiar terms and correct terms. Flautist is actually a British English word. Flutist is an American flute player. So, a lot of flute players, a lot of flutists around the United States consider themselves flutists. But it's pretty funny, when you want to sound like you're in the upper echelon category, I'm a flautist. But either one works. I just say flutist. If
Okay.
I think I shared that, if I were in South America, because I have toured there a couple of times, I'm a flautista. So it really depends on it depends on where you are.
I
But
love
since
it.
I'm in
See,
America, I'm going to be a flutist.
Kim, Scott, tell me about South America. There's a story there. Take me to South America.
The story there. So I don't know. Most people don't know that I'm actually trained as a classical flutist. So
Mm,
my dream for years growing up was I wanted to be a classical flutist on stage, a soloist. I wanted to play with the symphony. So
mm,
I have degrees in classical flute performance and pedagogy.
mm.
So I still perform all over the world as a classical soloist in addition to jazz. But I was approached by a university in Lima, Peru, and they do this famous international flute festival every year. And their thing is they bring one representative from many of the countries as they could. And when was the first time I went? I guess it was 2002 or so. They wanted me to be the representative from America. And I thought, okay, is this for real? But it was a week in Lima, teaching at the Conservatory of Lima, Peru. I gave concerts there. I played for the ambassadors there. I played soloed with the Symphony of Lima, and actually and I taught master classes and lessons to coming musicians in Peru at the university.
Wow.
So that was great. And it went so well that I was invited two more times, 2 more years.
Wow.
And the very last time I went, I actually took a harpist with me because I'm in a harp and flute duo
Mm.
called Kimani Duo with a harpist out of Georgia. Her name is Monica Hargrave, and she's black, a black harpist. I'm right.
Wow.
So
Listen. Oh, God. Give it to us, Kim. Go ahead.
so she and I were representatives of America, and we went out there and we did classical and jazz. So it was a wonderful experience, and I've been invited back a fourth time, and because I'm traveling so much for jazz, I haven't been able to go back out there yet. But that was an awesome experience.
Wow. I just want to get in there real quick because the title of this show is called I Need a Session. And I want people to walk away. I want their ear to pick up something that tells them I can, I am, I will. So when I even think about you being invited to South America to perform your music, to teach your music, I just immediately go to your gift making room for you in this world. And and a lot of times when we think about classical music, the first thing that will come to people's mind a lot of times, they think about people who are no longer living in their white, like a Mozart. Their face doesn't always look like yours, but there are a lot of talented brown and black faces. And I just love hearing you say I am classically trained. And how old were you, Kim, as a little girl? Were you a little girl or a teenager when you first picked up a flute?
I was in fifth grade. I was really fortunate to be growing up in a household where my parents valued the arts. My mother was a music educator by profession, but both my parents played music. Both of them sang. They actually they had a funk band before I was born called the Dynamic Soul Machine, and they made records. They were on the Stax record label out of Tennessee, a huge record label. So I was always appreciative of music. They always took us to the symphony and played symphonic records at home, and we listened to jazz and we listened to all types of genres. Um, So I grew up taking piano lessons. I grew up taking violin lessons. And in fifth grade, I was introduced to the flute by my band director at the time in elementary school. Fell in love.
Mm.
Number one, it was cute. It was little, it was shiny. Everybody else had the tuba. I'm like, I'm not doing that. That's too big. But ironically, the flute is a pretty difficult instrument to just pick up and play. Most kids pass out or they can't make a sound. And I actually made a sound on the very first day.
Wow.
So, my teacher's like, well, I guess this is for you. But I fell in love with it. And the personality that I have, when I love something, I'm totally engaged in it. And I practiced nonstop. I mean, that's all I wanted to do. I think by seventh grade or so, I was already saying to my parents that I wanted to be a musician. When I run back into neighbors, neighbors that were my age at the time, growing up as a child, they say to me, "We knew that you were going to do something in music for sure." Because we remember being outside and playing and wondering why Kim was not outside. And then we would hear the flute.
Mm.
So what they remember from their childhood was Kim is always in the house playing that flute. That's all she wants to do.
Mm.
And now they look back and go, well, I guess that's what she needed to do because that's what she wanted to be, and she's doing that now. So I get a kick out
Wow.
of those stories.
Wow. I heard there were so many nuggets packed into that. I just want to go back. First, intentionality. I want to talk about the intentionality that your parents put there, because whatever you nurture will grow. And for my parents who are listening, if you give your children support, my goodness, I think you can do anything in this world. And if you are a child or a teenager or somebody in their 20s, 30s or whatever listening to this, and if you don't have that support, you go out and get it, because when you got that support, you can do anything. The other thing that I heard that Kim said, her parents, they took her to, symphonies and concerts. Um, Whatever you feed will grow. They fed that gift inside of her. So, parents, please pay attention to the gift that your children have inside of them and nurture it, and nurture the gift that you have inside of yourself. You got to get around like-minded people. She was around like-minded people. I think that is fantastic. I'm a little musical baby myself.
Well, all right.
So, Kim, I joined the band when I was in third grade. I picked up the clarinet. And by the time I got to the eighth grade, I earned my spot first chair. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. First chair.
Okay.
And did a couple of state competitions, and then went on to high school and was in the marching band. But by the time I
Very
put on that
good.
polyester suit, after the second, after my sophomore year, I decided to do flat core. But I have always had a respect for music. And one of the things that you said to me earlier, when you said, my parents introduced me to different genres of music.
Yeah.
And I remember my second band teacher, by the time I got to the sixth grade, he was the first person to introduce me, just kind of open up my, expose me to so many different kinds of music, which is why I love jazz now. I love rock and roll.
Mm.
My playlist at any given time, one day it may be Shirley Caesar, and the next day it may be Guns N' Roses. Because I just like, yeah. Yes. I mean, so Kim, now I'm ready to take a trip to that billboard, what I see in the back, those awards. What tell me about that?
So in 2019, I released my fourth album, Free to Be. And it came after taking a hiatus of like 3 or 4 years. I was on track of doing a new record every 2 years. But I met my husband and we got married in 2015. And I decided I wanted to focus on that for a little while because we had this blended family. And that's what I did. I went all in that. But 2019, I decided, it's time to get back in there. I had a newfound inspiration for what I was trying to say in music. Um, because I'm a classical and jazz flutist, I have a really different sound than a lot of the jazz artists on the radio. And my statement in my mind was, I'm free to be who I am. I don't want to sound like everybody else on the radio. That's what makes me stand out, you know. And so I crafted this album, and everything was uplifting and encouraging of people being themselves. So I've got Emerge, Free to Be, No Worries, things like that. Um, and my record label decided that this, record was probably going to make a really big statement, and it did. So I scored my first two #1 Billboard tunes from the album. So Emerge, that I wrote with a Swiss pianist, Jonathan Fritzen. He's out of Switzerland. We wrote this tune called Emerge, and it hit. I've had other songs on the Billboard before, and I was very grateful for that. But when this hit #1, it was a whole new ball game.
Wow.
It's a huge accomplishment. So that actually was given to me by my record label. They surprised me with that, and lo and behold, I got another #1, "Free to Be," that I wrote. Also was a #1 for a couple of weeks on Billboard. So really excited about that. And I'm working on my 5th album right now. In fact, the lead single from my 5th album comes out in February. So I want
Wow.
everybody to go look out for that. It's called Back Together Again.
Okay.
And I wrote that song last year while we were in the thick of the pandemic, because I was thinking, people are so sad and depressed because we're having to quarantine. We're away from our families and our friends. You can't hug your mama. How crazy is that? And I was thinking in my mind, man, when we're out of this pandemic, we're going to be just so excited to be back together again.
Are people able to pre-order?
Yeah, actually,
Okay.
they can. It may be easier to go to my website, and the direct link is on my website. You just click on that link, it'll take you right to whatever digital distributor you normally purchase from.
You said you took a break in 2015, you got married and you all had a blended family. I heard a lot right when you were saying all of that. And what really stood out for me, fast forward 4 years later, you were ready to get back into the studio and create something again. But the word that really stood out for me, you said, I focused. So even by the time I hear blended family, I hear the work that goes into that, and I hear the intentionality, and I hear the commitment, and you all did it. So for my families who are listening, what I heard Kim say, I decided to take a break because family, it is first, so I could hear that. And so sometimes when we are moms and we are operating in our family, we can just kind of get, I don't want to say stuck, but there is something more out. There's something more than putting together and managing the family. And before we even got married, before we became a wife, we were rocking and rolling in a different lane. And sometimes we can disconnect from that. And when we disconnect from that, we can kind of feel like, well, wait a minute, where did I go? We can get disconnected from our love, but there's a solution. At any given time, we can press the reset button. So by the time I heard Kim said she focused, what she was doing was she was pressing the reset button. And look what happened when she focused. She got a #1 album. So for anybody who is watching and who is listening, if you have something that you are passionate about, it's okay, to be mom, to be auntie, to be teacher, whatever it is that you're doing. But if there's something near and dear to your heart, focus and put a plan together. And I really do think you're going to like what you see on the other end.
Talk about focusing and channeling your energy. When you make your list of goals, you set those goals, you write the vision down. God says, you make it plain, right?
Yes.
When it's before you and you can testify and like, these are the things I desire to do. These are the things that I want to happen in my life. And you see it in front of you. Your job is to just execute at that point, because you've already stated what your vision is and what your goal is. So now it's time to put the work in there.
Yes.
And I even teach my husband and I teach our kids that right now. Write the vision down.
Yes.
If you can write it down, you have a vision, you have a plan, you can put the work ethic behind it, you can do unlimited things.
Yes.
You know, we have to teach our children and encourage them, you know, that they can really live out their dreams. You know, it's not cliche. It's not just something people say. You can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want to do. And I always tell them, I
Yes.
said, you know, mommy wanted to play the flute for a living. And I had many people, you know, in my life over the years growing up, not family, but on the outside, who were like, I don't think you can make a living, you know, playing a flute.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
you need to come up with a different plan, or, you know, your lips are a little too big to play the flute, or,
Mm.
you know, Black people don't do classical music. I heard all kinds of stuff,
Mm.
you know, and if I had listened to that, I would probably never be where I am, but I didn't, because I
Right.
knew that's what I wanted to do. I
Yeah.
knew that's what I had passion for. And we have to know that whatever we are passionate about, if we put, you know, our hearts and minds into it and the work ethic, it'll work out just fine. You can do whatever you
Yeah.
want to do.
I'm so glad that you shared that. I mean, because those are part of the challenges. Any road that we travel, there are going to be some bumps, So,
Right.
just kind of hearing that, but you made it, you're making it. So at what point, Kim, did you feel like, wait a minute, here the challenges go? Because at what point did you say to yourself, you know what? I want to do this for the rest of my life. I am music. I want to make music, write music. At what point did you just make that
Hmm.
decision?
I always wanted to make music. I never knew that I would be making jazz and writing and singing and on stage with, you know, 30,000 people out there in the audience. I always knew that could happen, but that's not what I desired initially to do. So, like I said, I wanted to play with the symphony. And then the challenge early on with that was, I knew I was trained, I knew I was talented enough. But if you even look at the symphony right now, there aren't a lot of people of color on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there was the challenge of, will I be accepted? I know I have to audition. Will I get a fair audition? Um, and once I decided I was going to put fear away and just go with, I've worked hard to prepare for these auditions. I have the desire to do this thing, and I am worthy of a chair in that symphony, or the whichever symphony I'm applying for. Once I made that commitment, you know, I took the audition, and I mean, right now I play with the Tuscaloosa Symphony Orchestra because I took the audition, I won the seat, and in the symphony realm, once you audition and you make a seat, it's your seat for life until you give it up. With jazz, it didn't come up until about 2010. So I am also an educator, and you know, educators are out of school over the summer months. Um, and in 2010, during the summer, I thought I need to do something a little more innovative. I want to, you know, channel my creative energy even more. What can I do? And I started thinking, I love jazz, have always loved jazz, never tried to play it, but I knew I had a really good ear for music. I could play anything I heard and
Mm-hmm.
read and write.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, you know, I don't hear enough flute on jazz radio. What's up with that?
Mm-hmm.
I know there are jazz flutists out there, but why are they not playing it?
Right.
So I decided to pick up some R&B tunes and some jazz standards and learn them over the summer. And I made a recording, a YouTube video of some of them. In fact, you can still see them right now. They're still up. You know, nothing ever goes away. But before I even made records, I said, I'm gonna do a Beyonce tune. I did Deja Vu. I'm gonna do a not India Ari, Erica Badu, Orange
Right.
Moon, and I'm gonna do Spain by Chick Corea, and I'm gonna put it up on the internet, and we're gonna see what happens. People went crazy. Like, what?
Wow.
It's a flute playing Deja Vu, you know. And once I saw that there was room for that,
Yes.
because it's so different. You think of flute, you think of a symphony, you think of little chirping birds, you know, whatever. But the flute can be funky. What? So once that happened, I decided I'm going to help the flute have a bigger voice in jazz.
Yeah.
And then I started making, you know, doing jazz performances. And that led to someone saying, well, can I buy your album? I'm like, I don't have an album. well, maybe I should be making records. And then I started making records and they started doing well. And then I was, approached by a record label out of California, and it just took off.
Wow.
It just took off. So that's how it all evolved.
So Kim, do any of
But
your children play music? Do any of your children play instruments?
no, my son, so I had a son from a previous marriage, and he loves music. He was in the choir in school. Took piano for a while. It didn't stick. He's an athlete, true and
Mm-hmm.
true. However, his love for music is so deep that he likes to, he's like my biggest critic, like
Mm-hmm.
on the positive side. He'll
Mm-hmm.
say, if I'm writing a new song, I have to run it by him first because he wants to
Right.
see what it sounds like. He wants to feel the groove. He helps me name tunes. He helps me name my albums. I run stuff fine. But on the last album, Free to Be, when I was creating that record, he came to me one day and he said, Mom, I created this song on GarageBand and it's going to be on your next record. And I thought, okay.
Wow.
You got to encourage the kids, right? You don't know.
Yes,
Child,
yes.
please. But he played it for me and I was like, this is really good. I mean, it was really good. So I took his tune to my producer of that record. And what do you think about this? And the producer, Kelvin Wooten, I don't know if you know that name. Kelvin Wooten is a producer for Mary J. Blige, Jill Scott, Earth, Wind and Fire,
Okay.
Anthony Hamilton. So he produced that last record and he said, this is actually really good. Maybe we should take this and work with it. So we did, and it made the record. So my son's name is Jaden,
Okay.
and we titled it Jay's Groove.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So he has an ear. He gets a royalty check. He's all excited about that. But he's a brainiac and an athlete. And then my husband had twins from a previous marriage,
Mm-hmm.
twin boys, and they love music as well. They did band in high school, but they're athletes also.
Mm-hmm.
And by profession now, because they're grown, they are computer software engineers
Oh,
or computer
fantastic.
engineers. So,
Oh,
yeah.
listen, success. I love it. Kim, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Kim is going to take us out of here with Take It to the Rink.
Take it to the rink. This is a tune that I wrote driving down the highway one day. I grew up going to the skating rink with my dad, and I just remember how spirited and how fun and how engaging it was, and the music just made you feel good. And so I wrote this song, and I said it had to have this title because it takes me back to that moment.